This is an interesting lecture. So let me go straight and introduce it. The relationship between patients and healthcare practitioners have been in existence since immemorial. Because when we talk about the ancient professions, we talk about medicine, law, then accounting somehow, and the other one I will not mention. Because it is too late in the day. That is, patients are entrusted, or they entrust themselves to the care of these professionals for examination and treatment. You go to your doctor, you go to your nurse, you go to your midwife, you go to a PA, then you tell the person, I'm sick. And he will be the only person who can tell you, go and sleep. Do this, do that, for me to examine you. Patients seeking medical care often anticipate recovery from their ailments. And in cases where the condition deteriorates, they may question whether the healthcare provider's action, that is it intentional or negligent? Because once you go to see a doctor, you have high hope that once I'm coming into contact with this doctor, with this nurse, with this PA or whatever, I'll be healed. But if at the end of the day, the condition deteriorates, then something happens. You ask yourself, what is going on? Let's look at health professionals in brief. There are categories of health professionals, and a member of each of these categories may come into contact with a patient who visits a facility to seek medical treatment. Immediately you go to hospital, you may go to where your name will be registered, you may be issued with a card, and the negligence and the intentional act start from that point. You gave your name, the person misspelled your name, and somebody may have the same name. Then the name is called. That person's drug is given to you. Your drug is given to the other person. How did it occur? From the onset. The role of each of health professionals is important, since an intentional act of negligence may have serious consequences on the health of a patient. The Health Professional Regulatory Bodies Act 2013, Act 857, regulates 5 identified health groups, and they are categorized as follows. The Allied Health Professional Council, we know those who are in. The Medical and Dental Council, the name will tell us Medical, Dental, Denpras, PA. Then we move on to Nursing and Midwifery Council, and our sister Abigail told us the importance of nurse, and at times they may have conflict with patients, and the conflict may be positive or negative. And if it is positive, then it will help the treatment of the person. But if it is negative, it sends the person to his or her grave as soon as possible. Then we have the Pharmacy Council, and we have Psychological Council. Let me start from common law. At common law, a patient has to give consent to a health professional to touch his or her body in the course of performing his or her professional duties. A doctor may touch the body of a patient in the discharge of his or her professional duties. Midwives and nurses attend to patients and may touch them on several occasions, more particularly when they are taking the temperature of a person and during administration of injections. Health professionals, such as medical and laboratory technicians, draw blood from patients for medical examination. Patients must consent to the bodily contact or medical procedure by a member of a health professional in a facility to avoid bringing an action against that facility and the health practitioner for battery. Battery means you touch somebody's body without the consent of that person. Where a patient fails to give consent and his or her temperature is taken or medical procedures are performed on his or her body, or blood is drawn from him or her body, an action for battery could lie against the trespasser. And in that sense, the trespasser will be the person providing medical care, because he has not authorized you to touch his body. Let's look at capacity to decide on consent. Because we are talking about charter, you are going to enter into agreement. We must know, can you give consent? Can you withhold consent? Let's look at it. Patients seeking certain procedures and treatments at a health facility are required to give express consent in a manner and form that would avoid legal suits in the future. Where an adult patient or a child is seriously sick and could not give consent, an appropriate person was required to give consent on behalf of that patient or child before any procedure could be performed. That was the common law position. You have brought your child, you've brought your husband. The person cannot talk, the person cannot give consent, and therefore give consent for us to touch the body of the person. In the case of RT, that is adult, whenever you read cases and you come across where we use just one alphabet, meaning we do not want people to know the identity of that person. So here, R, that is T, adult, refusal to give medical consent, which is reported in 1989 to All England reports. That is, the English court held that an adult with a full mental capacity may refuse consent, even where the patient may lose his or her life. Yes. That one is not suicide. I'm telling you, I don't want it. Leave me to die. But in reality, it is not suicide, because I'm not killing myself. It said that I am avoiding medical treatment. However, in that case, the victim was involved in an accident, the one we are talking about. The victim was involved in an accident, and her mental condition had deteriorated. Her mother, who was a member of the Jehovah's Witness sect, influenced her consent not to accept blood, true blood transfusion, because they want to go to heaven. The English court held that the consent given by her mother was void, and the doctor could proceed to undertake any medical procedure on her in her best interest. Here, the reason was that the person was sick, the mental was going down. Then at common law, mother is supposed to give consent, parent or guardian. Then the mother is saying, don't give. Why shouldn't I give? We belong to this sect, and therefore, the doctor proceeded to give, and it went to court. And the court said, what the doctor did was right, because the person was adult, but the person did not have capacity to give or withhold consent. And the doctor was right by rejecting the refusal of consent by the mother. Now, we are developing the law. The position of consent was settled in the case of F versus West Berkshire Health Authority. That is Mental Health Act Commission intervening. 1992 for All England Report, 649. The English court, held that every adult is presumed to have the capacity to give or withhold medical treatment. However, the presumption is rebuttable, but not on the grounds of lack of education or intelligence, but lack of necessary mental capacity arising from mental illness or retarded development. So here, the law was that if I come to you as a doctor, as a nurse, as a midwife, as physician assistant, and at times when people are sick, they don't go to hospital, they go to pharmacy, over the counter, they buy, they come to you. In that sense, they become your patient, and there should be a relationship between the two of you. If I come to you, then you look at me, I tell you, I'm adult, I'm 30 years old, so I'm adult. I'm more than 30. That's an example. Just an example. Then here, I'm telling you that I'm adult. Then the question is, I'm adult, I'm illiterate, and I'm coming from my rural area. And the law is that the fact that the person is illiterate, the fact that the person is coming from a rural area should not be taken into account. What we should take into account is the mental capacity of the person. But quite often we look at somebody who has never attended school, we say, oh, he's an illiterate. But that is not the position of the law. What the law requires us to do is the necessary mental capacity arising from mental illness or retarded development. Where the presumption is rebutted, let me come down to everybody's level. When we say presumption, meaning even though it could be otherwise, now we presume that this is the position. Show that it is not true. Where the presumption is rebutted, the health practitioner may provide a medical procedure that is in the best interest of the patient. In the case of S, adult refusal of medical treatment, the Family Court of the United Kingdom held that where a pregnant woman refuses to give consent, please, this one is very, very important. Where a pregnant woman refuses to give consent to a medical procedure, her interest should override the interest of the viable fetus, unless her refusal of consent may lead to the death of the viable fetus. That was the English position. I have come, I'm pregnant. Then you look at me, administer on me. Then I tell you, I will not undergo treatment. But if the doctor tells me that if you do not go, it will affect the varied fetus, because as at now, it is valid, it is not pronounced dead. And therefore, if it will affect the health of your baby, the incoming baby, then the doctor is mandated to attend. But where the doctor thinks that it will not affect the baby, but the mother herself, then you cannot force the mother to undergo that treatment. However, we are now changing the positions. However, in the case of RMB, the medical treatment, I have the citation, all of them are here. The same English Family Court held that priority shall be given to the interest of the unborn baby over his or her mother, and the mother cannot refuse consent to affect the interest of the unborn baby. So now we are moving. Previously, look at the condition of the child. If it will be impact negatively, but that may result to the death, then you can. Otherwise, you could not. But now, it is shifting. If you are pregnant, nobody forces you to go and take a baby in the womb. So once you have come to me and I'm attending to you, and I'm of the opinion that it is in the best interest of the fetus in the womb, then the law says that even if you refuse, I must go ahead and administer, and you cannot maintain any action against me. Any consent made by a patient that is subject to the influence of some third party, at times somebody may come to you, then you may see the husband, you may see somebody, then the husband may tell you, don't do it, don't do it. I witnessed one myself, where I'm a board chairman of that hospital. We attended a meeting, then there was an issue as to whether the bride should be administered to the wife. And the man said, no, I will not allow you. And I told them to go and do. But unfortunately, at the time that I went there, the woman had died because the man prevented them. And I asked about a year's time, where is the man? And I was told the man had married. And I said, this is nonsense. Excuse me with my language. He pushes you to your grave. And instead of saying, I will resist, he say, I will concede. Now, let's look at capacity to decide consent for an infant or adult whose mental capacity has deteriorated or retarded. The settled position in the United Kingdom is that it is the health practitioner who shall decide for a child, taking into account the procedure that will be in the best interest of the child. But in England, when they talk about a child, definition is 16 years. So when you read cases from elsewhere and you want to apply it, you must understand the context. In England, a child is a person under 16 years in terms of medical treatment. But in Ghana, it is 18 years. In the case of R, that is minor, worship consent to treatment, the English Court of Appeal used the standard in Gaelic competence, I will explain it, which was decided in the case of Gaelic versus West Norfolk and Wisbech, 1986 AC 112. When we say AC, that is their appeal court, 112, to hold that a 15-year-old girl, the subject matter was a 15-year-old girl, who suffered from serious episodes of mental behavior, lacked the capacity to give or withhold consent because she had not reached sufficient understanding and intelligence to take a decision affecting her health, and overruled the girl's decision by exercising its worship jurisdiction, even though the girl had previously indicated that she would refuse drug therapy. The girl said, I will refuse drug therapy. Meanwhile, she was 15, and the law says 16. And the doctor found that without going through therapy, the mother said she would not allow, but the doctor proceeded to do. And that was, so when it went to courts, up to their Court of Appeal, the court held that what the doctor did was right. It was in the best interest of the child. Then furthermore, in the case of RE, minor worship, medical treatment, that is what I have discussed in detail. Now we are moving to the UK legal position, then we come to Ghana. Why am I talking about UK? Because we belong to the same common law. And the law is that where you do not have a law and there is a good practice in any of the common law, your courts are allowed to allow themselves to be persuaded by those decisions. So even though it is not part of your law and you don't have a statute contrary to it, they are bound or they are compelled to allow themselves to be persuaded by those decisions, and we can use them. And once it is used by saying that I've allowed myself to be persuaded, for example, if I'm sitting in the Court of Appeal, in such case, I say that I've allowed myself to be persuaded by this decision, and I therefore hold that this is the position in Ghana. It binds everybody in Ghana apart from Supreme Court. The legal position in the United Kingdom is that a minor under 16 cannot give consent to medical treatment. Apart from the age competence to give to medical treatment in UK, their law is impari materia, meaning the same thing, to our Article 28 of the Constitution 1992. And the Ghana's one, we get it from the Supreme Law on the Land, the fundamental law, that talks about consent. So nobody can contradict it. Let's look at our Constitution. Article 28, clauses 3 and 4. I quote, "No child shall be deprived by any other person of medical treatment, education, or any other social or economic benefit by reason only of religious or other beliefs." For the purposes of this article, child means a person below the age of 18 years. That is the law in Ghana. So in Ghana, a person under 18 years hasn't got capacity to give or withhold consent. And therefore, when such a person is brought to a doctor or whoever who is attending to that person, the law is that you are bound to ensure that you administer treatment that will be in the best interest of the child. And the parent or guardian cannot tell you, the doctor, what to do. Then somebody may ask you, so if you do and the payment is not made, what do? You see the parent to come and pay. Who asks you to bring that child to the world? The law is certain that parents in Ghana cannot give or withhold medical consent, which is not in the best interest of their child. And to make it clear, the consent of parents under 18 years with respect to medical treatment is of no consequence. Medical officers shall perform their constitutional mandate. Now it has ceased to be statutory mandate. It has become constitutional mandate because it is the Constitution that is conferring that power or jurisdiction on you to exercise. In the case of adults who cannot give consent. The English position discussed in the case of F versus West Berkshire, I mentioned it not long ago, is the same as in Ghana, where no other person can give or withhold consent except a medical practitioner attended to the person or the court. If you are in doubt and they resist, they will not allow you, what do you do? And you think that this person will die, but the family members will not allow the doctor to do, then the law is that rush to court, get an order, and the court will order you to go, because the court has authority, particularly High Court, over all these matters. They make an order that, and it is not about rate. Rate will take time. It is by an application to the court, which could be heard within 3-4 days to give you authorization to go and administer. And somebody will ask you, if the person died in the second day, that one you made all efforts, but you were resisted. Now, so let's look at the position in Ghana, Article 30 of the Constitution. A person who by reason of sickness or any other cause is unable to give his consent shall not be deprived by any other person of medical treatment, education, or any other social or economic benefit by reason only of religious or other beliefs. So religious, other beliefs, they do not come in. The question is, the person has come to your facility. Does the person has capacity to give consent? The person cannot talk, or the person does not understand anything as a result of the sickness or any other thing. He cannot give consent. Then the husband will come and tell you, as for my wife, she tells me whenever she's sick, don't give this, and so if it is this alone, let the person die. Then if it were possible, you ask the person, then you must rather take the lead for her to follow you. So where an adult is of sound mind, that means, and the person, and he's of sound mind, and he's not incapacitated by sickness or any other thing, then he must decide what to do. But where the person is incapacitated as a result of mental or any other thing, then the law is that the power is given to the medical practitioner attending to the person to ensure that that person's interest overrides any other interest, such as beliefs, religion, and others. In the case of Mallet versus Sharman, this one is an important, very important decision for doctors. It is an important decision regarding a person who comes to a facility in an unconscious state and carries a card stating unequivocally, that is, unambiguously, he has a card, unambiguously, the person cannot talk. Then he comes with somebody, and it is stated on it, don't give me this medicine, or don't administer blood to me under any circumstances. In this case, the person said, don't administer blood to me under any circumstances. If you say under any circumstances, that means he has closed the opportunity. But if she had said, don't give me blood, then you can give several interpretations. Don't give me blood. You can say that, oh, when I cannot talk, or when this will happen, when this will happen. That is how we give our interpretation. But this one, the woman has closed all avenues under any circumstances. Then the facility did not administer blood transfusion to her to save her life, as the writings on the card were clear and not susceptible to two or more meanings. There was no ambiguity. Then the family sued the doctor for not administering blood transfusions to the patient who died as a result of the refusal of the blood transfusion. This one was in Canada, the Ontario court. I'm quoting what they said. Very, very interesting. Quote, the doctor cannot be held to have violated either his legal or professional responsibility towards the patient or the patient's dependents when he honors the Jehovah Witness card and respects the patient's right to control her own body in accordance with the dictates of her conscience. The onus is clearly on the patient when members of Jehovah's Witness faith choose cards intended to notify doctors and other providers of health care that they reject blood transfusions in an emergency, they must accept the consequences of their decision. Neither they nor their dependents can later be heard to say that the card did not reflect the true wishes of the person who brought it. If harmful consequences ensue, the responsibility for those consequences is entirely theirs and not the doctor's. But where it is susceptible to 2 or more meanings and the doctor fails, then doctor will be held responsible.